Today I'm in conversation with Tracy Nnanwubar, who is from Lagos, Nigeria, and is currently living in Langley, British Columbia, Canada, and is a university professor of academic literacy. And thank you so much, Tracy, for being on the podcast with me today. And I'm really delighted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. So I almost feel like here, like I need to plug in to say I I work as a part-time instructor at the university, like course instructor for like maybe a year and a half, and over the past 2 years, I've gone from like representing the Graduate Students Association in communication. I think I handled communication coordinating, and then from there I was moved on to become a peer tutor at a writing center. And then from there, I was moved on to become a staff member, whereby I would teach academic writing only on the Masters of Leadership program. And then from there, it was teaching the same academic writing on the MBA program. And that was at the Richmond campus. And then I was moved to the Langley campus to do both the MBA program and the MA lead and all the graduate students at the university. And then from then on, I was made the part-time instructor at the School of Education. And then from then now this fall, the dean is wanting to promote me to an adjunct professor of academic literacy. So in 2 years, I have moved very fast, might I add. And it's not commonplace. It's not normal in the university. I have been celebrated and also had my fair share of pokes and jealousy here and there, but isn't that life anywhere you go? So yeah, plus I'm the youngest member of faculty there, so I get it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And to be honest, I would expect nothing less from you, really. I was thinking about you, and the first time I met you was in England many years ago. And I was thinking how adventurous and ambitious you were then. And I don't think either of those things have probably tempered, have they?
Well, I would like to respond to that question with something that happened on your couch. I was 19, I had come to your home for that day, and I remember telling you that, oh, I think I said I wanted to be on TV and that everyone wants to be on TV. Who wouldn't want to be on TV? And you just looked at this teenager sitting on your couch and you're like, no, Tracy, not everyone wants to be on TV. And I didn't believe you then, really, Claire, I didn't. I was like, nah, it's just, this adult stuff. They don't know anything. I'm going to be the one to tell them what the world is about. Keep 19 years, Claire. I'm now double that age. And the only reason I'm doing this podcast is because you're my friend. Even when I moved to Canada a year ago, when I moved through all these positions at university and maybe a year, Maximise magazine, I think in the US, they also reached out and they said they wanted to tell my story. And, I think that was when the reluctance began. I've done, interviews here and there, maybe for my previous jobs and all. And I did enjoy, standing in the spotlight, telling my story. But now it's just like, as life has happened, I'm like, there isn't that, I wouldn't say spark, but that youthful exuberance that makes you want to, yes, go out and break a leg and change the world. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, I do have skill, and I know that skill can be useful. And on that note, I then want to step in and with my empathetic personality, then help or make a difference. But in terms of the whole, oh, everyone wants to be on TV and be famous. No, Claire, that one's my son's dream right now.
Right.
Not mine.
Okay. It's been inherited by someone else. There we go.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you're talking about your 19-year-old self, because I imagine your student body are similar ages to that self. Are they? Are they that
Yes,
kind of
they
age?
are. They are. So that's what makes it so that's what makes it so fulfilling for me. I didn't always have calm teachers. So I grew up thinking I had to be perfect. I mean, it helped me. It played out well, straight A student. I had already mainstreamed hard work and all of those types of things. But in wanting to be perfect in that type of way, especially from an academic standpoint, you kind of like miss out on other beautiful things about life that you can enjoy or be good at, but because you're so focused on making an A on this paper and making an A on every other paper, then you just miss out on those types of things. And I saw this student of mine going that way, and she's one of many who I've worked with, at work. I realized that a lot of people just need patience and understanding that mistakes are part of being human. Like, we're not supposed to be perfect, Claire. I don't know how in my lifetime I heard and internalized that, but I've spent my adult life doing the exact opposite.
Mm. Yes. And one thing you did in your early 20s, I think it would have been, was you did write a book, and that got published, didn't it? So say a little bit about the book.
When I was 18, sorry, and I was in my first year of college at the University of Lagos, getting my bachelor's in English. So I met your husband, a producer at the time, who was making a documentary about Lagos and London, sort of like looking for like a bridge, like an in-between, to show what young people in Lagos look like and do, and what young people in London also look like and do. So he reached out to me and, asked through my parents, through my mother actually, if I would like to be in the documentary. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to, take cameras around and show them my life in Lagos. And we did that. So shortly after that project happened, he had already, become a friend and whatnot. So when I went to the UK to try to study at, I forget the name of the university now, I think it was in Liverpool. So I went to London, and then I also, told him I'll be coming to London, and I reached out to him, and, we hung out. And obviously that was how I met you and wound up in your couch that day when I said I wanted to be on TV, and so did everyone else. So in the meeting, just by collaborating with him and going back and forth in maybe like a year or two, I did have many experiences while I was in the UK. And the first of them was, for the first time in my life, I realized I was Black. And I didn't know that I was. Like, I just always thought I was a girl or a budding young woman, just a person. I never really quite ascribed my skin color to part of my identity, because again, that was my first time being away from home on my own since I was born and now a teenager. So I was shocked to realize that I was Black, and to also understand what Black meant in an Afropolitan space or on an international platform like outside of Nigeria. And like I had mentioned, when I was younger, with all the things that I was going through, it was writing that helped me to cope. I would write about stuff. And once I write about it, it's out of my mind. I don't remember it again. I have to go back and read to remember whatever that traumatic experience was. So I wrote a short story about the trip to the UK. This summer, I think it was 2 or 3 pages. It was titled My Little Burnham on Crouch, I remember, because I lived in a place called Burnham on Crouch. So that short story was published, and then I met this literary agent that he was from South Africa. I don't remember the name of the agency, but he said he wanted to represent me if I would write the short story into a book. And I'm like, okay, what's all this supposed to mean? I just wanted to get stuff out of my head. How do I start to do a book? I thought I had to wait until, I became a professor, like now, etc. So I said, well, what would it hurt? I like to write anyways. But then I was scared because I didn't know like how book contracts and all those things work. And both my parents were not strongly in my life in a way to provide counsel or support. There was no one in my family history who had written or published a book. It's just not something that 20-year-olds or 21-year-olds in Nigeria do. It's not mainstream, right? So I didn't know how to proceed if I was safe. And then I reached out to your husband, producer, and said, oh, look at this. So from this my UK trip, this is what happened and all of that. And then he was like, just write it. Just write it. Whether or not it gets published, just do it for you. Just put it out there. So it took me 2 years to write that book. I started writing when I was 20, my third year when I got back from the NYU scholarship thing. And I finished writing it, I think the year after I graduated. The year I graduated, I was 22 when I finished writing that book. It turned out to be, I think, 285 pages. And Claire, I don't remember what I wrote in the book. I just remember that the main character, which is me, I called her Julie, and that was it. Like literally, when I write stuff, I have to go back to read it to know what happened. But I just remember that it was me realizing that I am Black, and that while at home we would worship the ground on which a white person walked, and like godify them, if I can use that word. But when you stepped out of that home in Nigeria, they weren't quite gods anymore. Like they were different. So I remember writing about that in my book, and things like that. And it got attention somehow. And then in the end, they said my little Burnham on Crouch is not good enough as a title, that we have to choose another one. I was like, okay, fine. You guys, I just need a title that shows that Nigeria merged with the UK somehow, like Nigeria. So he said I should think of a metaphor. And I'm like, okay, metaphor. Now poetry comes into place. And I said, what's one thing about Nigeria that is commonplace? And I said, red pepper. So here in Canada, we call them Scotch bonnets, but in Nigeria, we call it atarodo. I'm a Lagos girl, like I was born and raised, and so in Lagos, when we go to Malto market, you have this atarodo. It's very hot. You put it in the food and like, so everything we put pepper in everything, right? So I said, okay, red pepper. That's it. That's my metaphor for Nigeria, as I understand it, because we have red pepper in everything that we eat. And then I said, what about the UK? And I remember that each time I went to anyone's house or like a place in the UK, they would always ask me, would you like some tea? So I said, that's it, English tea. So I titled the book Red Pepper and English Tea, and then published it. And it got attention again. And they reached out to my publishers, I think, to say that they wanted me to be one of the writers at the London Olympics, the 2012 London Olympics. So we were all housed at the Sound Facts Center, and they had artists from different parts of Africa, writers, painters, people who dance, whatever you did, just from all the Commonwealth countries, as a way to support or champion or just be part of the Olympics. And I remember that they had us there for 2 weeks. They put us in this really fancy hotel. Was it a good enough hotel? I think. And they gave us, was it £200 every other day or every day? And an Oyster card. And they said, go into the land and write. It's like, yes, someone gives you money, accommodation, and a card and says, just go explore, go and write something. It was amazing. I think I may have written a couple of short stories here and there, but I didn't do anything with them literally, because we finished the show on the 30th. I got back to Nigeria on the 31st, got married on the same day in the court, and that was the last time I ever like wrote something, or like, it just, yeah.
Wow, what a journey. And
Yeah.
and I'm interested because you in terms of moving countries, you've been to England. Well, you were visiting and staying, for periods of time. You went to England, you went to India, you went to South Africa. So by a young age, you traveled a lot. So, and now you're in Canada. What prompted you to choose Canada as opposed to one of those other three destinations that you had familiarity with?
Well, when you become a mom, you start to think long term. It's no longer about yourself and, just hopping from place to place, You you become more like, okay, where can I build a home with these young people who are vulnerable and who are totally reliant on me? At this point, I would like to mention that I was married for 8 years, and then I got divorced in 2019. So at the time, I had 3 children. I left the marriage when my first was 5. My daughter was 3, yeah, 2 going on 3, I think, 2.5 maybe. And then my last one was a few months old, maybe 5 months or thereabout. And I left the marriage, and as at that time, I had gone back to do my second master's degree, and it was in being in that Department of English Literature, University of Lagos, reading books and being in that environment that was familiar to me, that built me into who I am. That was when I started to wake up and realize that, oh, Tracy, you can't be in a space where for 8 years you're not allowed to read. or write, or your personality is shoved on them, and all your books are not on the shelf, but then in Nigeria, we call them Ghana must go bags outside near a farm under a shed with rain falling on them, and you're not reading. Like, that's not how you feed who you are. That's not your essence. So I, at the University of Lagos, getting my second master's, I started to read again. I mean, I started by reading small books like Buchi Emechia's Second Class Citizen, and I'll be like, oh, hey, that lady, there's something about her that's familiar. I've lived that, things started to come back who I was, because for those 8 years I've just been in limbo, and even when I came back into writing or back into the world, some people ask me, it's like you died for 8 years. Like, there's nothing about you on the internet. There's no, like, where were you, And then I'll just be like, that cute, polite smile of, oh, it is what it is, because you don't want to like go into deets. But in getting my second master's and all of that, I started to wake up. I realized who I was and decided, okay, I will get this master's. While I got the master's once my last born was born. He was born in April, and that same April I went back to Unilag with him as a newborn. So I'll be breastfeeding in class, changing diapers at the back of the classroom. Because my professors remembered, oh, Tracy Straight who was supposed to be a professor, she's back after 12 years. Yes, we'll take her. We know she can do it. And they let me come to school with my newborn baby. And believe it or not, Claire, with all of that and divorce going on, I still made an A, like a first class in that master's. I did so. And now, sitting where I'm sitting at my age, I recognize that, writing, intellectual work, papers, it's me. I cannot be anything else, because even when the odds are against me, I'm still excelling. You know what I mean? Like, I remember strapping my newborn son to my back, reading, the paper. I did my dissertation on this lady the subaltern, Gayatri. Yeah, she there's a literary theory about the subaltern, and I remember, reading it and whatnot and making my markings while he's on the back sleeping. Then he wants to breastfeed, and I bring him, I put him still reading, and it's going in. Like, I'm not distracted, because it's just the same way like someone will say, oh, I'm a runner, I like to run in the morning or take walks. For me, writing and reading is that. It feeds me. It's who I am. I can do it in my sleep. Just wake me up and ask me about 10 words that mean joy. I'll give it to you in a heartbeat, because it's just who I am. And I didn't know all this. I didn't have the support system around me to say, Tracy, this is who you are. Go after it, folks. Like, don't diverge into any other zone. So anyways, at that point, I decided, after the masters, all my teachers and professors were like, you should just go and be a professor, go and get a PhD, leave Nigeria. We don't have that type of support for brains like yours here. Like, but am I really going to be able to do it with 3 kids? But everybody says, you can't do it. You'll never make it. Everyone who migrates and leaves their kids behind, they go and settle down and they come back for them. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. Let's go there. If we die on the way, it's fine. But let's go. I still had that fight, never give up, thing in me. I was like, I'm going to do this. And, the anger of, like, losing 8 years of your life just in limbo, not being who you are. And I'm like, I'm just going to go be me with everything I have. And I'm taking these 3 kids with me. They deserve more, So I decided, okay, we need to do it in a country where I can get the PhD, and then they can also have a good life. And a good life means them not struggling so much, even in terms of language. So they speak English is their first language. I've spoken English to them all their lives. All their emotions are housed there. Igbo is a secondary language. I'm now trying to teach them, but it's so hard because we're the only Igbo family within thousands of kilometers. But so yeah, I said I wanted them to go to a country where English was spoken as well. So that way they can also thrive in school, because if the language is an issue, regardless of how intelligent you are, you can't understand what the teacher is saying, even though you know the math. So I wanted them to have that easy landing. And then the English-speaking countries, Norway did offer a full PhD and then would also give citizenship and naturalize me as well. But I worried that the language wasn't per se English everywhere, and I didn't want them to have to learn something else. So that was how I didn't go there. Italy also did as well. I remember that was in the middle of COVID when there was this university, trying to get people to come over and whatnot. And because I had three kids, it would have been great in one small, I don't remember the name. I have to go through my emails for that. But I had studied Italian in my first year and I made an A. So it was one of my, you have to do English and like a secondary language, a backup European one. So I had studied Italian, but then I was like, what about my kids? Are they going to start learning Italian now? So again, I was like, no. So it was then between the UK, which I don't want to go back to after just having that experience as a teenager. I was like, no, I'm not gonna go back there. And then I was like, okay, so now we have the US and we have Canada. And I need to mention here that I've traveled to the US severally. I've held a business visa twice. So the work that I did from 2009 until 2011. Yeah, until 2011. So I had gone to the US for, like various business meetings on behalf of the workers. I worked there as a marketing manager, and it was part of the work. So I had visited and seen and experienced it. But the US number one had bad media at the time in 2019 when I was deciding where to move to. Kids would go to school and there'll be a shooting and they won't come back home. And I was like, no, I don't want to send my kids to school. And then I'm holding my hand like, it's going to come home today or is it going to be a phone call? So that was the only thing that put the US up. But I knew it would have been easy to just, get a visa and put my kid's name on it. Because when we moved to to Vancouver, I just, went and got like another visa so we can always go to the US to visit family. So it's not an issue because of my history. They also got their visas and whatnot, which is still valid. But I didn't want to build a home there because of that safety thing. And technically, there are stronger cases of racism in the US than here in Canada. So Canada, we are very multicultural. Everybody came from somewhere. We're all immigrants in Canada, and we know that, and we accept it, which is why we have like truth and reconciliation days. And each time we go into an event or even in our emails at work, we sign, I recognize that I'm on the unceded territory of the you mention all people, like we own it that we made a mistake and so we know we are immigrants. So we are tolerant of others who have come. So I said, this is the place where I believe we will be received. And not that my kids will not.
Had you been to Canada prior to the move? So
never.
No. So the assessment you're making now is based on your experience there. But prior to going, what were your observations or insights? I've seen why you eliminated other countries, but there's still English speaking in South Africa and Australia. So what was the pull of Canada?
Canada, from the research that I did, Canada would give me a pathway, like a straightforward pathway to become a citizen. Give me an English education and my children an English education. So that way we don't have to be forced to learn another language just to get around, like to get by. Thirdly, Canada is a very strong socialist economy in terms of the fact that there's a lot of balance in how money is distributed. Canada will give you child support. They will give you, like food, whatever you need. If you're not making a certain amount of money, Canada will give it to you because they believe that your children should not suffer because you are unable to maybe make good choices or life happen to you or whatever. Canada will not let the children suffer for the sins of the parents. Let me put it that way. And I wanted to give my children that opportunity because while they don't understand it now, I mean, my son is coming around to getting to understand how mommy is, but at the time we moved 2 years ago, they didn't understand that, but I had already thought ahead. And another thing I really wanted them to have, I wanted them to have fluidity of movement. So that if they woke up tomorrow and Canada didn't work out, they can take that same navy blue passport and go to any other country and not need to go through all the hellish things that I went through to fill up my Nigerian passport with visas. Because aside from the countries I've mentioned, Uganda, Kenya, Egypt, that was the most difficult visa to get. Egypt, the US, UK, I've mentioned that, Sao Tome and Principe, Zambia, well, Ghana and all the other West African countries like Ghana, well, those other ones, Togo, Benin, those ones were not really issues. You just go stamp and come out. But all those other ones, Ethiopia, these were all hard to get. Germany, a German visa was very hard to get as well. I think I was even denied one for Finland. And then after they appealed and whatever, I was given again. But when they gave, I was like, you know what, I'm not even bothering. Why do I have to defend myself that I'm not going to be a criminal or whatever when I get into your country? So all of those things I went through in my 20s, just trying to travel or have an experience or try to be given equal footing like anybody else who wasn't holding a green passport that said the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It was hell. And life will already bring its hell to my kids at its own time. Everybody has their own challenge. So life will also deal with them. But I wanted them to have less battles to fight.
Mm. So
Hence my
really,
choosing Canada.
yeah. So really your move was very much I mean, it certainly met the criteria for the PhD, but it was very much for your children.
Oh, yes.
Mm.
Yes, in a heartbeat, yes.
Mm.
Because I had, and I don't know that we have so much time to go into much of my childhood, but I feel that my parents were not mentally, emotionally, and otherwise resourced to raise a young child like me. Which is why now that I have that mental awareness, now that I have the resources, like I have the intellectual resources, I literally have been able to turn my brain into money in 2 years of being here. You know, I jumped 3 tax brackets a year after being here. That's how well my brain has served me. And because I have that, that's why many people think about things called generational wealth. In my own lineage, it wouldn't be money, but it would be the brain. Let's use it to make it better for the next generation. And while we're at it, let's recognize that our time is running out. So there's only so much we can do for ourselves, but we can make a difference in the next generation and the next generation. And I will have a good life. I mean, come on, we have free healthcare in Canada. So whatever. You should see the way they take care of me with my asthma. Oh my word. Yearly breathing tests. And the doctor calls to check up. Have you got your medication? You don't worry, we'll mail it to your house. And they send the inhaler, make sure we take it. And each time they send the receipt, I'm looking at each inhaler, it's like $120 without tax. I'm like, what? The government is paying for it. They're taking care of, so they are taking care of me, no doubt. But I still know that I could have gone to any other country in the world and they would have taken care of me. But what about my children? I didn't want to leave them hanging. And that was why I didn't make the move until 2022. I was waiting for Sam, my third child, the one who was the newborn that got the master's with me. I was waiting for him to come of age so that when we come here, he can go into the school system at 5. So he would be a kindergartner. And then that way I know, okay, they're only school from 9 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. to 2:30. And then I can, do a couple of things, maybe, work and blah, blah, blah. So I was waiting for that in Nigeria while I was working as a consultant for a company in Belgium that handled projects for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Gottmacher Institute. So that's how I was raising money in FX to move here. FX, that's foreign exchange, because you can't move here with Naira. It's just too expensive with 3 kids. So so in that, in that moment of waiting, my son Sam died in a car accident in 2022. So when he died in January, I said, you know what? We're going. Let's just go. We're waiting for him, but he couldn't. So let's just get on with it. Let's just go. So so we came. He came a few months after he died. 2 months after, after he passed. So I was grieving when I moved to Canada, like smack in the middle of it. But I had to come because I knew that if I didn't come then while that would be good for me to stay and grieve or to slow down or not take on another huge project, but what about the kids, right? And yes, their brain is elastic and whatnot. Like there's a way their play therapist and grief counselor explained it, like they have the capacity to heal from trauma faster than someone like me. But the thing is, there's a time frame, like you wanna do those interventions or that emotional intervention before they're like 12 or thereabout, before their character forms, and then they just take that trauma smack into adulthood. So I was like, nope, let me move now, because I know that they will get support. Then I can figure myself out. So I'm still figuring myself out. In fact, at this point, their play therapist and grief counselor, he did all the way up to OEI with them. These are all medical terms for helping people process trauma. And then they're now in like a really good spot, and I can see all of that in their life. I don't want to go into my children's own success and achievement, because I know this interview is about me, but they only need to check in with him now during milestones. So milestones are the day Sam died, the anniversary of that, Sam's birthday, the anniversary of that, the day Sam was buried, the anniversary of that, and then their birthdays and the new school year, because every new school year means a new change for the child. So we want to check in on that. So they technically only need about 3 or 4 check-ins, because a lot of these dates overlap. Like Sam's birthday is right about the time of my daughter's birthday, so you can book an appointment for that. So all of these things, all that support that they got in 2 years, they're standing on good ground. But my own grieving is only just starting. And also, so these were the sacrifices that I had to make to come to Canada, because I said, let the trauma be processed and end with me. If they do carry anything into adulthood, let it be when adulthood brings its own, like maybe when they have their first heartbreak from their boyfriend or girlfriend, or you know what I mean? Those things will happen. But let them be resourced and deal with all the childhood stuff, then go into adulthood and be ready for whatever comes.
Yes. It's an extraordinary thing you made possible for them to have that level of and to know that they're in good hands with an ongoing structure that's available to them when they need it. And yeah, and you did that at the neglect of yourself. And now the focus is a little bit more on you.
Oh, the focus is on me. I go for grief counseling every day, every week. Sorry. Every Monday is my day. I gotta go, because I'm not even anywhere close to where they are. Like, I need more support, because there's a lot that has happened. Just processing the divorce, and a child who dies at 2 years old, the sweetest age when they can do nothing wrong, and dies out of an accident, right? It's out of your hands, right? Someone was driving and didn't look behind. That's it. And then you move to a country where you have no family and no one, and you've never visited. So literally, we got off the plane at YVR with my carry-on luggage, which had my MacBook and all my certificates, because I said, with my brain, I can build a new life. Every other thing can wait. So that was how we moved, and then went to the Airbnb, and the rest is history. I mean, today we settled, but that was literally how we moved here. So not knowing anyone, not knowing anything except the people in my class who were teaching me, that my professors were the only people I had been in communication with. So I took the risk, and I came, and actually, Claire, it turned out right. So
yeah.
And now that I think about it, it shouldn't have, because that was a really scary, stupid thing to do with kids. What if I didn't make it?
Yeah, I suspect inside you would totally count on yourself, dig deep to provide whatever you needed to. But I do acknowledge you for the fact that you're recognizing that your time has come now, that you need to, because your life is full on, just before we began this call, you were talking about your morning, getting your children ready for school, and then straight from that, you go into teaching, you go into everything else that you do, you make time for this podcast, you're full on. And so I acknowledge you for listening to yourself and seeing what you need, because 2 years in Canada and 2 years and a bit since Sam died is very, very short.
What I had to do was and I didn't know that the human body has the capacity to do this, but I had to suspend. It's called some sort of emotional suspension. They probably have a technical name for it. But if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, So I was at the third pyramid, going on to the fourth one when I was in Nigeria. And then moving to Canada, I went smack down to the first one. So because you're on the first level where you're just trying to get food and shelter, every other thing like emotions, which is what you focus on the third stage, if you don't focus on that, your body does some sort of emotional suspension. So you're kind of like a zombie moving around because you're not tuned into your emotions, but you're just doing what you need to do to put a roof over your head. Make sure that during the winter you're in somewhere warm so that you don't freeze out, because our winters get really cold in Canada. And they say we're in the best part of Canada, BC, but I'm like, okay, let me keep quiet and not complain, but please give me Lagos's heat. What do you mean? It's, you know how we go, oh, it's nice out and it's sunny. Oh, it's nice out. 18 is cold, right? So, but anyways, that aside, it's just I had to do all that suspending just to get us to a space where we can live in a house. Everyone can have their bedroom. You know, there's a yard to play. There's a car to drive with heater in it. You know, like not one of those new ones you buy off marketplace where you fix 1 million things. You know, it's just so just to get us that space and place where okay, you're sure you can get your Costco groceries every week, and there's enough protein for them to eat, not candy, and you know, it just snacks that will nourish them. So all of that was just a process, just getting there. And then now that I'm there, my body's like, okay, Tracy, now it's time for us to do. So thankfully, the university is on a holiday now. We're on break until the fall semester starts in September. So this summer is the first time that I would ever like take time for myself in all these years, maybe since I've been a single mom, since I started my journey in 2019, maybe because in Nigeria, the only difference between Nigeria and here is that in the 3 years of being in Nigeria before relocating here for 2 years, I did have help that I could afford. So I was a communications consultant and they paid me in FX. I was being paid in euros. So by the time you convert that to Naira, I was earning millions per month. So by the time I had a nanny, I had a living nanny, I had a cook. I had a hairstylist who would lock my daughter's locks and also do mine as well. I had locks at the time. And then I had a home tutor who would come every evening to help them work on their homework and improve whatever strength they needed academically. And then I also had a driver. And when I got tired of, keeping the driver, I have to maintain the car. And I said, you know what, just have one Uber guy that is your guy who comes and moves everyone around. So I had all that. But here in Canada, no nanny, no cook, no driver. I have to drive. Nobody to do the hair. In fact, I have to do my daughter's hair, but because I can't get my hair done, I didn't have to pay someone to do it. And on the average, on the minimum, you're looking at about $200 for that. So you have to be working very hard and making good money as a Black woman to be able to take care of your hair here. Otherwise, you put it in a wig and it doesn't get hair, then it falls off, then it's weird. So all of those things, they are little pieces, but when you add them up, I wouldn't say you have to be hardworking to live in Canada because there are people who work hard. I would more say it's a thing of strategy. You have to be strategic because you can work hard, but if you're not applying things and understanding the system and leveraging the resources in the best way, then you're not able to. And then knowing yourself, knowing your limits, your time. Okay, you have this number of hours in a day. What do you want to do? I just feel that what has more served me is not necessarily only hard work or intelligence, it's more strategy. Like being able to know you need information, knowing where to get the information from, getting that information and then applying it. So that's more what was helpful because for me to, work at the university and then have part-time jobs as well, then run the home completely and in a way that they can eat good food and not food that just, anyhow food. Because we try not to do burgers and candy in this house. I say you can get all that outside in your friend's house when we come here. Yeah. So there's that because that's how you keep the child healthy. And that way they don't go to the hospital all the time because you're the one driving to the hospital. You're the one administering the medication. You're the one. So if you want to save all that time, just sort it out in food ab initio before that. So there's that. Then they play all sorts of things, choir, rugby, gymnastics. You're the one driving them to all these things. My son is an artist. His work is being hung up at the Langley Arts Council's gallery at 10. I have to, the media interviews. There's all that. So, they have to grow and then I have to also rest. So all of that has been going on while we're just settling down. And sometimes as parents, it's hard for us to set ourselves aside and help the kids bloom. It's difficult because some people just don't have the capacity to do that. We parents, we are humans too. So in doing what I've done, I'm not going to call all parents in the world to that standard. No, God, no, I won't. Because it has taken everything from me just to be able to get my kids to where they are now. In fact, I have to go into these meetings, we call them parent conferences, where you conference with the teachers and the leaders at the school. And when I go in, I would be like, yes, I know that the child is extending in this and that, and you want them to teach other kids, but please remember that she's a child too. She should play. I know she's responsible and you want her to be in charge of the class and getting them to arrange their desks before they go out. But she's a child. She also needs to be out there playing too. It's not just about academic fluency. You also want the child to be emotionally fluent as well. They shouldn't feel that they have to be perfect all the time. No, most of my days at home at breakfast then starts with, mommy has a PhD in making mistakes. That's how we learn. So I don't want to raise kids who are perfect. I want to raise kids that are happy. Because if they are happy, they won't be sitting on a counselor's couch every Monday for the rest of God knows how many years of their life trying to fix things that could have been done when they were younger.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of it, and for sharing, how you've all the thoughts and ideas you have in the investing in their future, because you know your own pain, and you know your own, and you've really taken care of their pain. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the hardest job in the world being a parent, Claire, I tell you. Oh God, they pop out of your womb and they give you that little present. You're like, oh, so cute. It's not, that's not it. It's a lot of hard, unpaid work that can even break you while you're at it. I think that's the true test of a human character, parenting. Not really work, jobs, career, yeah, but raising another human. And you don't know if you've done it right until 20 years, maybe, if you're lucky. Then you can, so it's like you don't even know you're doing it wrong. You just have to wait till the end. It's thank God I'm done having kids. That's all I can say.
Given what you've created in 2 years and what you're looking to create, do you have the right to stay long term? Do you have a sense of security in that?
Yes, I do. Because like I mentioned at some point during our talk today, I said Canada has a straight for like its pathway is straight. It's not like one of those countries where I have to fall in love with or marry a Canadian citizen just because I want to stay. No. Canada is built on immigration. At the moment, we have more senior citizens than we have working in the working population or in the youth category. Also, unlike Nigeria, where people just have 8 children, 10, 9, 5, just popping them out anywhere. Here, you can't just. And a lot of people are now choosing not to have kids. And I get it. I didn't understand initially when I moved. I said, oh gosh, that's so selfish. If someone said they weren't going to have kids, then where would you be today? But now that I'm here, Claire, 80% of what I earn goes on my kids. It means if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't need a 3-bedroom house. I'll probably just rent a room with a girlfriend and just go to Vancouver downtown karaoke and whatnot, just living my best life, as they say. But with kids, it's expensive here. So when people look at that, right? I don't have any student loans or any student debt or any lines of credit or any of those things that Canadian citizens have, because I've come from Nigeria where in my head, you only spend money when you've earned it. Like you have the money complete, you save it. And then like when I bought my car cash, the dealership was looking at me like, she is mad, man. Who pays cash for a car in Canada? Like, oh my God. Like almost all of them came out to greet me and put the car in a bow and send me home with it. But to me, that wasn't weird. That's the way I understood it. But you have a Kenyan who, when you're 18, maybe they give you a credit card. You start before you know what's going on, you're 38 or 35, you're ready to have kids, and you have all this debt you have to pay off. Maybe if you did get an education, there's a student there as well. There are all the interest rates, the principals, and God knows what all the other things are. By the time you have all that going on, where do you have the financial prowess to birth and care for a child? You know, how do you make that happen? So you just feel like, you know what, I'll wait till when I'm ready. When I'm ready, then I will have a kid. They just had to do it when they could because it's so expensive to live here. It's
Mm. Mm.
yeah.
And it's interesting what you're saying about some of the things you've learned from living in Nigeria. You know, the point you made about that you spend from what you've earned rather than spend on a credit card. So it's not that you've had multiples of zeros sitting in the bank, it's that you've earned it and then you buy, right? So that must that's you know, that sounds a bit like how it's not how I've lived, but it sounds like how my parents wanted to educate me. But it sounds a really commendable way forward to. So it's interesting. You're seeing qualities in Canada. You're seeing qualities from your growing up in Nigeria of the general culture, you know, and you're bringing them together in how you're educating your children. So how say something about that, because that's you have quite a unique take. I mean, any immigrant parent will have that. They'll have a unique take of varying cultures that they can bring together in how they live their life and in how they bring up their children.
That makes me think of some of the comments I've had, like neighbors or you know, like other parents in my kids' school here in Langley, a comment on that. And I think this is a good opportunity for me to talk about that. So I didn't know that there was any intentionality with the way I was raising my kids. I was just thinking of what values do I have, which ones have helped me highlight those more, which ones haven't helped me bury those ones. For instance, the one that hasn't helped me is being in Nigeria and not being able to talk about the fact that we have lost a member of our family and not be stigmatized. Like the school where three of them attended in Nigeria, they refused to announce in the assembly or, like, you know, burn a candle or like have a, you know, that silent moment you have when someone passes in a community, and they said if they do that, the parents will pull their kids out of the school because they'll say this is the school where kids die. So they went from that type of culture to here, where we can now talk about it, we can open it up, and we can add that as part of our identity. I'm a grieving mom, I'm a bereaved parent, it's part of one of my tags now, right? And it's not bad, but in Nigeria, I would have been like, oh, there's something wrong, some spirits or some curse, you know, this. So that one doesn't have enough from that. Then now let's go to something that has helped. Let's start with something like even just time. So they have to be up at 7 every morning, and they have to go to bed at 7:30 every day on school nights. It's not questionable. Then over the weekends, which is Friday, then you can have all your sleepovers on Friday. So if you have 10 friends in class, we're going to schedule them for the next 10 weeks to be on Friday. The sleepover will happen, you know, and I'd have to have known the parents also, you know, like maybe like have a coffee or fraternize with them, or just have some back and forth conversation to understand what values are in that home, you know, because all of these things rub off on your kids. You don't want to be doing a good job here and then out there, someone is ruining it for you. So when their friends come here, I tell them, drop all your F words downstairs before you climb the stairs. And they go like, oh, yes, yes, Miss Tracy, yes, Miss Tracy. But they know that about me, and then the kids too as well, because kids watch and see what you do. So they are unlikely to use the F word if they don't hear me using it. So something as little as that, because that's how I learned. So with time, and now they have that routine and it works. So even if it's a day when I have to leave and go to work early, or it's a day when I'm coming back late from something, they know to, you know, to do the bedtime routine and then go to bed. And then we all call over the phone and then we pray together because there's a home phone. And so we pray, and then so that's our routine, starting an enemy prayer. So all of that has helped them have some sort of balance in just, I can expect this every day, every time. And that's one thing that helps kids go. Even if you can't give them anything, you can't give them food, just give them balance, give them a routine, something that they can trust, something they can rely on, something that when they feel the whole world is going woo, 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 they can come back to that and know that that routine works. So just in having that routine, and then, you know, my neighbors ask me, how do you get them to sleep at 7:30? Honestly, I don't really know that there was a way that I did it. I just know that when they started going to school, like, and at that time, whatever I'm doing, like, okay, 6:30, I'll lie down with you. When you sleep, then I'll come out of the bed. So as they've gotten older, I've reduced it. Like at a point, it went from that 6:30 to 7. And then now that he's going to be going into middle school in the fall, we're now going to move it to 7:30 because the older they get, the less sleep their brain needs. So they don't need to get like 12, then it became 11, and then now they are doing about 10. So I'm also adjusting in that regard, because if they have a brain that is well slept, when they get to my age and they can't sleep as much as they want to because they have to go to work or whatnot, they'd have, fueled for decades of whatever is going to happen moving forward. So that's how that Nigerian like discipline has come in to help. And that way they can get to school on time. If they get to school on time, they can, fraternize with the teachers, create that sense of responsibility and whatnot before they are classmates. That when you go to drop the kids 15 minutes to bell time, the parking lot looks like a deserted ghost town. And then at the bell, everyone comes flooding in. So you see what I mean? To them, it's now second nature to sleep at this time. You only have to have your meals at this time because that's how I've done it and that's how I learned in Nigeria. But that's not the way the culture here in Canada has fed other kids in their class or other kids in the community. My son, when he turned 11, when he turned 10, when he went into the last year of elementary school, which is where he's at, you can register them to do like a babysitting course, because then they are legally old enough to take care of a sibling at home, and also a home alone course too, which he did in his penultimate year of elementary school. So he did that one last year. But I made sure I paid for him, that he did all these courses where he also learned how to make like a healthy meal, or like how to look out for his sister. And I realized that this sibling relationship is so important. So important. Siblings can be the best friends in the world, and they can also be the worst enemies in the world. It just depends on how the parents come in and handle that in the formative years. And now that son is gone, they've only got each other. And it's so important that they love each other. Because maybe one day, what if I'm not there? I want them to continue to love and honor that relationship. So in him learning to be home, taking care of the sister, and she also learning to listen and respond and collaborate in washing dishes, or, hoovering, or choosing how to do the chores, that will help them in the long run, because life will bring its hard knocks on them. But if you know that you can always go to your brother's place and be safe, or he can always come to his sister's place and be safe, that would be one step closer to a better life, things that I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you are a totally beautiful mother. It's very moving listening to you. So, yeah. So, well, I really appreciate the generosity of everything you've said, and the huge a friend of mine said, who's a parent, anything for children is not a sacrifice, and I really get that, and I can hear that in your speaking, but it is a huge contribution. It may not be sacrifice, but it's definitely, the detail, the things you think about, it's extraordinary. So yeah, sounds like you're all blessed in having one another.
Oh, yes. Yes. I am blessed indeed having them.
And do you ever be tempted to visit Nigeria? I'm pretty clear you don't have an intention to return to live there.
I will in the future, but not just now. But I definitely would
return to visit, or
to visit, yes, but not to live.
No, exactly. But yeah, you not just yet, but at some point you plan to visit. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to visit, and I'd also like them to see, because Nigeria is still very romanticized in their mind, and they still remember puff puff. Remember when we used to count keke, Now they count Teslas. This game when kids are driving in the car, they say, "Oh, Dad, we're counting keke. I'm going to count 200 today." And then in Nigeria, in the Uber, they'll be counting keke, and anyway, they'll be like, "Mom, I counted 200. Sally counted." Now it's Teslas they are counting. I say, God, levels have changed. So I want them to see their kekes and their okadas again.
Yeah.
I want them to also tune into that part of their culture in some way, so that they can still remember what it's like to be Nigerian, even though now I would rate them as they're really diasporic Nigerians, to be honest. They are Afropolitan in some way because they are not fully abroadians and they are not fully Nigerian. They're just in some sort of in between. We are merging from both worlds to make them a person. So.
And for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, tell them what a keke is.
In India, we call them auto rickshaws. So they are a three-legged sort of little contrivance that we use for public transportation in Nigeria. We call them kekes in Nigeria. In Thailand, they call them tuk-tuks.
Yes.
In India, they call them auto rickshaws. I'm not really sure about any other countries that I've visited that had them and had names for them. So it was a form of transportation because it was cheap. We had the casing of like a car, but then it moved with the same amount of petrol that you'd use to move a bike, a motorcycle. So it's very economic, really. So we had a lot of that in Nigeria. There were more kekes than there were buses. And I don't know whether they are more Okadas. So Okadas are what we call motorcycles, and we also use them as public transportation as well. But here in BC, we use them for luxury. So now, like everywhere when you're driving on the highway, it goes like, it's motorcycle season. Be careful of the riders. And in my head, I'm like, in Nigeria, everyone drove an Okada somewhere. So why do we need to have a season for it? But
yeah, I used Okadas and kekes when I lived in Nigeria. I just never told my mum.
You never told your mom?
I don't think so. She was always a little bit wary of someone being on the back of a motorbike.
Yeah, they can be dangerous, and we never rode on them with a helmet, so I can understand, I can understand.
I always felt very safe, but
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, people fell off them, but I never had. I don't think I ever had an instance, no. And it's only now that I'm in Canada that like helmets are a big thing. Like the kids have to wear their helmets to bike, but they're now used to it. The scooter, the bike, they just wear a helmet. But I didn't grow up knowing I learned all that. Heck, I didn't even learn how to ride a bike. So yeah, that's one of my summer goals, to learn how to ride a bike. So no, it's just a different way of living, which is why I would want them to go back to Nigeria to visit at some point, just so that they have that frame of reference to compare, so that they understand how different their life is. Because for them, this is normal, this is mainstream, this stability and this security, it's just there, it's just what life is. But sometimes it's good for you to have a little bit of that struggle. And from some research that I've read, immigrant families, by the first generation, the first immigrant. So I'm the first generation immigrant. So all of that value and whatnot is there, and the goal to succeed and all the tools to make it are there. The second generation, they also have that as well, because they've seen the first generation struggle and they've been a part of it. Like when we moved in our first few months, I think in our first year, actually, when we had to use the food bank, because I just had to pay all these different immigration or whatnot things. I mean, so there was just no way to buy groceries. They watched and saw how we had to eat this type of food or that type of food, and now we can see all the Costco food. So they've seen that oh, it's true, when you work hard, it's there. By their children, it can still be there, because hopefully grandmom will be around to say, no, that's not how you do it. There's all that. But by my children's children, they might be too Canadian to even remember that once upon a time, one woman moved here with nothing and they carry on luggage and 2 kids. That's the way the world works somehow.
But then they might have your book to read.
Yes.
Then there might be a book that reveals it all, and they'll learn through your book. Who knows?
Okay. I will get writing at some space and at some time when my body is ready to purge. I know that writing that book will be my first ticket out of the zone of grief. I know that I do need to write what I have been through in the 5 years that I have, been a single mom and just moved here. Like all of that is a book waiting to happen. But sometimes your muse disappears when you've experienced trauma that is so strong. So when my voice is ready to come out, I'm sure she will come out.
And in the meantime, do really use your summer to look after yourself and to take care of yourself and to have some fun moments with your children. And thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me, Claire. It's been an honor.
Well, I
I
think
feel
the
lighter.
honor's been mine. Thank you very much. Good to be with you.